So today we're going to be talking about... Wait, can we get this in black and white? Okay, that's much better. So this video is going to be covering a little bit of history, but mostly it's going to talk about the technical foundations of monochromatic photography, which is going to be done by exploring key photographic genres like fine art, documentary, portraiture, and a little bit of fashion as well. So let's take a deep dive. I'm going to take you back to 1826 to when the first image was created. So Joseph Niepce captured the first photograph, which was a black and white image showing the view from his window. Now, many early photographic techniques, including the calotype process, the daguerreotype process, and others, produced only black and white images, which was a restriction at the time. Now, until a few years later in 1861, the world of photography only knew black and white, which is when James Clerk Maxwell created the first color photograph. He achieved this by combining 3 images, each with a red, green, and blue filter. Before the birth of the 3-color process, there were many other attempts to include color in photography, including hand coloring daguerreotypes. However, this image was the first full-color image. Even after the introduction of color, black and white photography continued to be used by artists for its beauty and expressive qualities. Monochrome photography, through the exclusion of color, isolates the fundamental visual components of an image, which is luminance, shadows, texture, and form. This simplistic approach demands a sharper eye for tonal range and spatial composition, compelling photographers to construct visual narratives through dynamic contrast and composition. By using grayscale, photographers can evoke emotion and convey stories with an intensity that color cannot always achieve. Working in black and white encourages the photographer and viewer to focus on core elements like lighting, composition, and what's included or excluded from the frame. These are things that can be overlooked when you're preoccupied with how your colors interact. It shifts your attention to the relationship between the subject and background, free from the distractions of color. Now, to bring in an alternate perspective, I showed these 2 images to someone whose understanding of the art piece was in its incipience. In the black and white image, it was noted that the shadows were more intense and defined to give a better structure to the image. The other big difference noted was the red cross seen at the bottom right, which was more distracting in the colored image despite the saturation of it being turned down, whereas the focus wasn't drawn to that in the black and white image. Another viewer noted that the color image gave more information on the narrative, but noticed that the values could be better depicted with ease in the monochromatic image. With black and white portraiture, the focus shifts entirely to the emotional connection between the viewer and the subject. In these examples, our focus is instantly going towards the expression, the emotion on their face, their actions, how the lighting and depth makes us as a viewer feel about the photograph. In the first image of Nicole Kidman, the foreground and background are irrelevant because the lighting is illuminating her figure. In color, that has a possibility of distracting the viewer. The same can be said of the other 2 examples. Now, monochrome photography adds a sense of professionalism and maturity to a story, which makes it favorable medium for photojournalists to work with as well. Documentary photography is also about telling a story, and black and white photography is a distraction-free technique of doing so. All these images are telling a story and compelling us to focus on the subject, whoever it may be. Fine art photography. Here's some examples where nostalgia, simplicity, and emotional depth, along with the way contrasts and textures stand out, are what give fine art photographs their unique charm and lasting appeal. Black and white photography limits the elements you can focus on. The most crucial element of that is light, and nothing quite captures light in as pure of a way as black and white photography. The shadows in this image accentuates the form on the subject as seen in the other images as well. In these examples of fashion photography, Irving Penn, Helmut Newton, and Peter Lindbergh applied the techniques that we've talked about to create focus on the garments in these images. Without the color to distract the eye, there's emphasis on the forms of the jewelry as well as the human figure. Now, quoting Peter Lindbergh, who is known for black and white fashion photography, with black and white, you don't try to make things prettier, make things chic, or make things agreeable. No, black and white is authentic. The color stops on the surface. Black and white penetrates the skin. For me, it's not about beautiful or not beautiful, but about real and not real. Lastly, we're going to be looking at Ansel Adams. Through his images, we can see how monochrome photography matured into a language of its own. His technical and artistic vision helped define black and white landscape photography. So, applying the knowledge we've acquired from form, tone, and texture shaping monochrome photography, direct your attention to how these techniques are used in his words. To sum all of that up into one sentence, monochromatic photography is a great way of storytelling and capturing one's attention, just like I captured yours. It's all about how lighting interacts with shadows and form and texture to create a compelling image. And that's what we love about black and white photography.